Welcome to Hood War Stories. In this episode, I'll be discussing the Crenshaw Mafia Bloods. The Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, also known as CMG, is a Black American gang located in Inglewood, California. Darby-Dixon is an impoverished 6-block stretch of Inglewood, California, located just southeast of the SoFi Stadium and the Hollywood Park Casino. It's nicknamed the Bottoms because it is at the bottom of a sloping terrain. About 1,500 Black and Latino residents live there. In the 80s and 90s, the Darby-Dixon neighborhood had all the necessary ingredients for an urban nightmare. Gangs, crime, drugs, decaying apartment buildings, unemployment, and unrelenting jet noise. The area is directly under the Los Angeles International Airport flight path. Darby-Dixon also deals with overcrowding conditions, in which as many as 20 people may live in a single apartment. The community of 2-story apartment houses and duplexes has been a long-time stronghold of the Crenshaw Mafia gang. Crenshaw Mafia was established in the late 70s as a branch off the Inglewood families. They are close allies with the Devil Lane Bloods. This alliance is known as Mafia Lanes. For decades, the CMGs remained in tight control of the shabby enclave of 60-year-old apartment buildings, selling drugs on the street, exchanging shots with enemies, blocking walkways and stairs, gambling, drinking, and urinating outside the buildings. CMG members exerted control by tactics such as damaging the cars and apartments of neighbors who complain, and by using pit bulls as canine enforcers. The gang operated a defense squad made up of snipers who shot at police and rival gang members from the roof. Young boys who rode their bikes around alerted gang members to approaching patrol cars. And the drug trade provided revenue, enough money in fact, to help the gang produce high-budget rap videos portraying their violent lives. By 1985, the Darby-Dixon area had become one of Los Angeles County's most notorious markets for rock cocaine. Located near the 105 and 405 freeway, Darby-Dixon was convenient for customers who felt uncomfortable going to more established drug centers in South Central Los Angeles. Customers lined up along Lawrence Street to buy crack from CMG members who posted up on corners in broad daylight. At night, gunshots sent the neighbors ducking for cover. On October 21st, 1990, at around 11 p.m., 7 teenagers associated with the Crenshaw Mafia Bloods were on the corner of 104th and Crenshaw. A car with its lights off drove slowly past before parking across the street. 2 Crips emerged with assault rifles and began spraying the youth with bullets. Over 20 shots were fired. Eric Malone, a 16-year-old student at Morningside High School, died at the scene. Eric Cole, another 16-year-old student, died the same night at a nearby hospital. School officials said a counselor had been working with both victims to steer them away from gangs. 2 other victims remained hospitalized in stable condition, and another sustained a minor wound. Throughout the 90s, the Bottoms continued to be a gang-ridden war zone. Gang-related crime grew so severe in the streets and alleys that city officials obtained a permanent court injunction in 1998 to keep Crenshaw Mafia members from hanging out together in public. It imposed a curfew and prevented them from using cell phones, walkie-talkies, and pagers in public. The injunction was a response to the shooting of a 5-year-old boy and the beatdown of a pregnant woman, both believed to be acts of the Crenshaw Mafia. But even after the injunction, violence and terror continued. The following year, violent crimes in the Darby-Dixon area shot up to historic heights. During this time, Crenshaw Mafia worked extensively with surrounding Crip gangs. Crenshaw Mafia refers to themselves as the Crab Murder Gang. Crab is the most disrespectful epithet to call a Crip and can warrant fatal retaliation. Crenshaw Mafia also kicked off their war with NHP after Tiptoe was killed. On the evening of September 27, 2001, Christopher was driving his car to meet a young woman near the area of 104th Street and Crenshaw Boulevard. Attempting to follow directions written on a piece of paper, he mistakenly turned right on 104th Street onto 10th Avenue, going the wrong way on a one-way street. This was located in the heart of CMG territory. A man at the end of the block, mistaking him for a rival gang member, aimed a 9mm handgun and opened fire. Christopher was badly injured and drove a few blocks until he crashed into a median barrier on Crenshaw Boulevard. He died a short time later from a bullet wound to his left side. On the morning of September 29th, 2001, 2 days after Christopher's death, Christopher's mother and his 3 brothers Brian, Tori, and Michael drove to the Bottoms near the area where Christopher had been shot. They saw a number of gang members on 10th Avenue, and Michael pointed his finger at them, gesturing as if he had a gun. Around midnight that night, A number of people had gathered at the family home to mourn the death of Christopher, including his three brothers and their friend Floyd. In the course of conducting his own investigation into the shooting, Michael received a call from a woman who identified herself as Nicole, who said she had information about Christopher's death and would meet with him. The four men left the house in Michael's Ford Mustang to get something to eat. Michael then drove the group in search of a place where he was scheduled to meet Nicole. They were driving east on Century and stopped at the intersection of Century and Doty when Floyd looked through the rear windshield and saw a burgundy Ford Contour. Behind the Mustang in the lane to the left, a black male was leaning out the window of the rear passenger side of the Contour, yelling something. Floyd told Michael that a man was yelling at them, and Michael began to roll his window down. The male pulled out a gun and started shooting as the Contour moved forward parallel to the Mustang. After several gunshots, the Contour pulled away. Michael was shot in the head, and his brother Tory was shot in the neck. Brian jumps into the front seat and steered the Mustang out of the way of traffic. Brian and Floyd then waved down passing vehicles and left the scene to call for help. When the police arrived, Michael was in the driver's seat and not speaking or moving. Tory was lying in the street. When asked if he knew who the shooter was, he responded, "CMGs." Tory stated that a female named Randy was involved in the shooting. Brian and Floyd soon returned to the scene and spoke to the police. Brian described the shooter as a light-skinned Black American male in a red sweatshirt, and he indicated that the shooter had fired from within a red Ford with three females inside. Both brothers Tory and Michael died from their gunshot wounds. The three brothers were murdered in a span of 3 days. At the police station later that night, Brian and Floyd identified Craig in a photo lineup of known gang members. Also that same night, Craig met with his girlfriend Takesha, got in her car, and directed her to the scene of the second shooting. According to Takesha, Craig looked at the Mustang and said, "Yeah, I did that shit. I put him next to that car and let them niggas have it." He also admitted to his girlfriend that he shot at Christopher's car because it was traveling the wrong way on a one-way street, which he believed was a maneuver used by members of a rival gang before they committed a drive-by shooting. In May 2002, about 7 months after the shootings, Craig's former girlfriend Takesha was living temporarily in the Beverly Garden Hotel under a witness protection program because of her anticipated testimony in a different case. Takesha was 7 months pregnant at the time, and her 3-year-old daughter was living with her. Takesha was scheduled to move to a more permanent location. The police detective that was working with her recently had given her a card that showed the new address. In the early evening of May 1st, 2002, Takesha heard a knock at the door. A female voice said, "Housekeeping," and Takesha opened the door. When she did, 4 people rushed into the room, including Craig's brother Duran and 3 others. After Takesha had been pushed onto the bed, Duran questioned her about money she was supposed to send Greg in jail, and asked why she was in the witness protection program and whether she was snitching on Greg. When Takesha denied informing on Greg, Duran hit her on the head with an unloaded 9mm handgun. He then loaded up the gun. The intruders placed a pillowcase over Takesha's head and beat her. At one point, Takesha heard Duran answer a phone call, telling the caller, "Yeah, we found her. What you want me to do with her?" Duran also said that he had not found any money and asked if they should Uber her, which Takesha understood to mean shoot or kill her. He then put the phone next to Takesha's ear. The caller, whose voice she recognized as Greg, asked why she had not deposited any money in his account. Takesha had put money on his books a few times in the past, but had since stopped doing so. Takesha told Greg she would put more money in his account if he told Duran and others to leave. Duran took back the phone and continued to talk, then ended the call by saying, "We'll just beat her up some more." The group then used the telephone cord to whip and attempt to strangle Takesha. They also lit some sticks and used them to burn her approximately 140 times. They left after taking some of her clothes and the contents of her wallet, ordering her not to tell anyone about the incident, and warning her that they knew where her grandmother lived. A detective interviewed Takesha while she was in the hospital being treated for her injuries. She reported to them for the first time that Greg told her that he was responsible for the murders of the 3 brothers. Craig Armstrong, from the Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, was found guilty of 3 first-degree murders. He was further convicted of premeditated attempted murders of Brian and Floyd. He was also found guilty of 5 additional counts. He was convicted of torture with the infliction of great bodily injuries. Craig later admitted the allegation that he was out on bail at the time he committed the crimes. The jury returned death verdicts for all 3 murders. Crenshaw Mafia also beefed with the Legend Crips. The Legend Crips are one of the few Crip sets in Inglewood, which is a city dominated by Bloods. They are primarily based in several apartment complexes located in the Arbor Village section of Inglewood. In early February 2006, The legend Crip shot and killed a member of Crenshaw Mafia. In retaliation, DeRay stole a red cheap Cherokee and picked up Eric and Tony, both of whom were fellow members of Crenshaw Mafia and were armed. The three then drove around Legend territory looking for someone to shoot, but could not find anyone. DeRay then drove the Jeep to a different neighborhood, eventually driving past a home owned by Jeffrey. The home was located near 104th and Hobart. This area is the Rolling Hundreds. Jeffrey operated a barbershop in his garage, so a group of about 9 people were in and outside of the garage, getting haircuts, talking, and playing. After DeRay drove down 104th Street past Jeffrey's garage, one of the passengers in the Jeep yelled at DeRay, "Hey, hold up, stop the car." DeRay saw a crowd of people in the garage. Tony then stuck their arms out of the car and showered the garage with bullets. Over 15 shots were fired. Desgood was fatally wounded and 5 more people were shot. DeRay quickly drove the car away, then parked it in front of a Smart & Final. The 3 men got out and ran away. 6 of the people who were in the garage at the time of the shooting testified at trial. Raymond was in the garage at the time. He was speaking with Desgood about football because Raymond had received a football scholarship to Ohio State University, and Desgood was advising him to continue staying out of trouble and to keep doing a good job. When the shooting started, Des tried to pull Raymond out of the way and shield him from the bullets. Des was killed as a result. Tony Wilson, also known as Lil Two-Face, and Eric Bird, also known as TikTok, and DeRay Goodman were all each convicted of 1 count of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. They were each sentenced to life without parole, plus 225 years to life. The Darby-Dixon neighborhood today continues to be impoverished, but violent crime has significantly dropped since the 80s and 90s. Due to demographic changes and gentrification, Crenshaw Mafia isn't as prominent as they once were. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.